On the topic of interviews, then the part one is, hey, we gathered the team, came up with a plan. This is what like Marcus is going to talk about, Ray is going to talk about with the candidate. But the big effort goes into scheduling of the interview, right? Looking up
Right.
everybody's calendar, manually checking, hey, who's available, who's not, sometimes actually making phone calls and whatnot. And then again, like once that has been set up, people get busy with their work. There's no show, there's cancellation or swap, rescheduling. So again, I'll pose this question for you. How could automations with Workato alleviate some of these painful experiences?
Yeah, so the big thing here that we're talking about is scheduling. Um, One of the things that we can do is connect to basically any application that you need to um, when you're building these automations. So in this case, even though we're in Slack, we're talking to Greenhouse, and we're probably also talking to your custom calendar applications like Google Calendar. So let's say that in this case, we've decided within the chat, after speaking to each other, that we know what the interview date is with Jordan. So I'll just click set interview date, and this will bring up the schedule interview interface. I'll choose any date and time that suits us that we've decided on, and then we'll click submit. So all of this is being done through Slack, but we've scheduled the interview automatically. You'll see that in the background, TalentBot is scheduling the interview with both Greenhouse and Google Calendar in our case. And once it comes back, this will take a second. Yeah, once it comes back, you have this new interview event. So actually, if I open Jordan's profile in Greenhouse, you'll get to see the interview event in the current stage. So there you go. The two people who matter, so the recruiter doesn't have to be in on this call. It's the hiring manager and it's this other panelist. So these events have been created. We've also created them in Google Calendar. And when you create the event, you can also add things like the candidate's information. You can add the interview kit. So the interview kit is the same one that we show in here in Slack. And when the interview finally comes around, what we usually do is open the interview kit, walk through the questions, have the interview. If you need to, you can look at the resume as well. And then at the end of it, you can score the candidate. So you can say something about them and submit this. But what often happens with this, just like it is with any process, is that even though this is sort of linear, you do have bottlenecks where the interviewers forget to do things. For example, in this case, interviewers do sometimes forget to fill out a scorecard after an interview, and you don't get that feedback that you would have gotten really quickly at, say, like that initial stage when we were just advancing or rejecting the candidate. So it's not because it's really hard, it's just because sometimes people forget to do things. So let's say that we're not in this channel, we're doing something else. Then, excuse me, we'll trigger off an event off screen. And we should get a new notification in the Jordan Clark channel. So if we just get that.
Just to clarify, this happens like, for example, if the interview is set for 9:30 a.m. on June 25th, so and it was a 30-minute, we will actually look up the panelist's calendar, and after the time has elapsed, we will post a reminder, right?
Yeah. So what's actually happening here is we're waiting for things. You can set it specifically for that calendar event, but Greenhouse also allows us to search for applications where a certain amount of time has elapsed since the last activity. So in this case, it would have been that nobody's actually sent in a scorecard. So I would actually go in here as the hiring manager. This directly links to the scorecard. And then I say, create interview. And we can do this from memory. Actually, this was great. And I want to advance this candidate. So submit the scorecard, and that's submitted. I actually want to show you how you can do this within Workato, because this part is particularly interesting. Let's create a new recipe, or we can use this one actually. Let me get rid of some of the actions.
So Kyle, we have a question. So far, like one of the reasons we've been talking about Slack is how we eliminate the need for users to go from one app to another, like in this case, like for Greenhouse and Google Calendar, and there may be other apps involved for some of our customers, right?
Right.
But for the scorecard, we did show that they have to go to Greenhouse. Is it because like the scorecard is a very heavy amount of work that needs to be done to fill that out, and Slack may not be the optimal interface for that, or is there a technical limitation that prevents us from enabling users to fill out the scorecard from Slack?
Well, I think from a technical perspective, basically any kind of button interaction or free text or select interaction that you could think of are things that you could totally do through Slack. The question is, what's the most natural way for us to solve the problem? So earlier on in the demo, you did see a situation where we accepted some rejection feedback for one of the candidates, and that was done completely through Slack. But sometimes the interface created by the vendor, in this case Greenhouse, ends up being the most natural and the most seamless way of solving the problem. So what we've actually done is just linked it here, and that would actually do the best job, I think.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. What I was going to show you is how you can set up some of these reminders. And conceptually, this is quite a simple thing. You just create a new scheduled event, and the app that we're using here is Scheduler by Workato. It's kind of like a timer or a clock. So here, let's say that your service level agreement is that you have to respond to candidates every 48 hours or so. So every 24 hours, if something has elapsed, you do need to send a notification. So rather than one person trying to track this frantically, you can automate this. So what I'm actually going to do is search all of our Greenhouse applications. So go to Greenhouse, search applications. We can search based on last activity. So in other applications, you'll see this as something like updated at. And last activity after is something where you could, in theory, just put in a fixed date or something here. But I want to show you how natural it is to use a more powerful feature like formula mode, which on its face looks rather intimidating, but the help feature is actually quite useful. So here it's telling me that I can select now as a timestamp. And not only can I select now, I can say now plus 2 days, now plus 8 hours. And what I can do is do now minus 1 days. And what this will output is all of the applications where nothing has happened for a full day, and we should actually do something about that. And since I want to send notifications for each one of these applications, again, I use the repeat action, add in the applications from the previous step, and then I can start sending out notifications in Slack. So workbot, post message, and then you would do all the stuff that you see here. So, hey, hiring manager, could I get your scorecard, please? And that's actually the gist of this automation. It's quite conceptually simple, and Workato is powerful enough to do it and to pull it off with just a few actions.
So Kyle, just to give a little more context, like when companies that have like hundreds of openings or more than those, and there are like dozens or like 20, 30 recruiters. So instead of those recruiters, 20, 30 recruiters manually following up with 15, 20 hiring managers individually, this one simple recipe can replace all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.